The last bolt missed my head by 3 centimeters. I know this because Sergeant Corin told me so after he fired it. He was aiming for the hormigaunt that had gotten behind me, he said. The shot went through its skull and cooked its brain in the time it takes to blink. He saved my life. I thanked him. He said nothing. He was already shooting at the next one. This is what I remember about the moments before everything changed. Not the fear, not the chaos, not even the sounds of men dying or the smell of burning chitin and cooked meat. What I remember is how ordinary it felt, how normal it had become to have death pass within 3 centimeters of my skull, how routine the violence had grown after 6 months of fighting on Valdris Prime, how completely we had accepted that this was simply what life looked like now. My name is Davian Roth. I am 23 years old. I was born on a farming world called Meritas in the Segmentum Pacificus. The world was unremarkable in every way. Rolling fields of grain, small communities scattered across fertile valleys, simple people who worked the land and paid their tithes and asked nothing more from the Imperium than to be left alone to their lives. I grew up helping my father tend the fields, learned to drive the harvester machines before I could read, spent my childhood watching the sky and wondering what lay beyond the stars that appeared each night. I joined the Imperial Guard because my family needed the signing bonus to pay their tithes. The harvest had failed 2 years running. Disease in the crops. Something the tech priests said came from off-world, carried by merchant vessels that did not follow proper quarantine protocols. My father had taken loans from the district governor to buy new seed stock. The interest on those loans was crushing us. My mother worked herself sick trying to keep up with the payments. My sister Sarah, only 14 years old, had started working in the processing plants to bring in extra income. The guard recruiter came to our district on a cold morning in early spring. He set up his table in the town square. Behind him was a hololithic display showing images of guard regiments in parade formation. Clean uniforms, polished equipment, soldiers standing proud beneath the aquila. The images did not show the reality of war, did not show the mud and blood and terror, did not show men dying in agony or the 1,000 small horrors that fill the spaces between battles. But I was young and desperate, and the signing bonus was enough to clear my family's debts. I signed the papers, took the oath, became property of the Imperial Guard within the span of an hour. My mother cried. My father said nothing, but his hands shook when he embraced me. Sarah gave me a small metal pendant that had belonged to our grandmother, told me to keep it safe, told me it would bring me luck. I wore it on a chain around my neck for the first 3 months of training before a drill instructor noticed it and confiscated it as non-regulation equipment. Training was 16 weeks on a military installation 3 systems away from Meritas. They taught us to shoot, to march, to follow orders without hesitation or thought. They taught us that individual life had no meaning, that we existed only to serve the Emperor's will, that death in service was the highest honor any human could achieve. They taught us to fear the commissars more than the enemy, to understand that cowardice meant execution, that the only acceptable outcomes were victory or death. I was assigned to the 88th Cadian Regiment, 10th Company, 3rd Platoon. The Cadians were famous throughout the Imperium as the finest soldiers humanity could produce. I was not Cadian. I was farm boy from an unremarkable world, but the 88th needed replacements after heavy losses in the previous campaign. They took whoever they could get, trained us in Cadian tactics and doctrine, told us we would live up to the regiment's reputation or die trying. My first deployment was garrison duty on a fortress world called Helikos. 6 months of standing watch, running patrols, training exercises that simulated combat scenarios. It was boring, exhausting, mind-numbing in its routine, but it was also safe. We lost 2 men to training accidents, 1 to equipment malfunction, 0 to enemy action. I started to think that maybe the guard would not be as terrible as I'd feared, that maybe I would survive my tour and return home with honor and the pension that would keep my family comfortable. Then we received orders for Valdris Prime. The briefing was simple. Hive world, 12 billion inhabitants, important manufacturing center for the sector. Currently under assault by Tyranid Hive Fleet Jormungandr. Imperial Navy holding orbital superiority, but barely. Ground forces needed to hold key positions until reinforcements arrived from neighboring systems. Duration of deployment, indefinite. Expected casualties, significant. The commissar who delivered the briefing spoke in a tone that suggested he was reading a grocery list rather than condemning thousands of men to death. No dramatic speeches, no appeals to honor or duty. Just facts delivered with bureaucratic efficiency. We were being sent to Valdris Prime because the Imperium required bodies to slow down the Tyranid advance. We would hold for as long as possible. When we could no longer hold, we would die in place. Reinforcements were coming but might not arrive in time. These were simply the realities of Imperial military logistics. We deployed 3 weeks later. The transport ship was crowded with guard regiments from a dozen different worlds. Cadians, Catechens, Mordians, Valhallans. Thousands of soldiers packed into cargo holds designed for hundreds. The air was thick with sweat and fear and the particular smell that soldiers carry. We spent 6 weeks in transit. 6 weeks of poor food and cramped quarters, and the growing certainty that we were being shipped to our deaths. When we arrived in orbit around Valdris Prime, the first thing I saw was the Hive fleet. Even from orbit, even through the reinforced viewport of the transport, the sight was overwhelming. Massive bioships that looked like enormous insects or deep-sea creatures. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They moved through space with organic fluidity that made them seem alive in ways that human vessels never did. Around them floated clouds of smaller organisms. Spores and mines and weapons I had no names for. The Imperial Navy was fighting them. Cruisers and destroyers engaging the bioships with lance batteries and torpedo salvos. But for every Tyranid vessel destroyed, 2 more seemed to appear. The fleet was losing. Slowly, but losing nonetheless. Our transport made it to the surface only because the Navy sacrificed 3 escort frigates to clear a path through the orbital swarm. I watched those ships die through the viewport, watched them burn and break apart, watched escape pods launching and being consumed by Tyranid organisms before they could reach safety. 3,000 Navy personnel died to get my regiment to the ground. The landing was rough. The pilot brought us down fast and hard in what used to be a civilian spaceport. The facility was already damaged from previous Tyranid assaults. Craters in the landing field. Destroyed buildings, burned out vehicles. Bodies that had been left where they fell because there was no time to clear them. We deployed from the transport at a run, formed up into our platoons, waited for orders that came through voxcasters crackling with static and interference. The orders were simple. Move to designated defensive positions. Hold those positions. Kill anything that is not human. Do not retreat without authorization. Do not allow the enemy to break through. Die if necessary. We marched through what remained of Valdris Prime's capital hive. The city was a ruin. Hab blocks collapsed into rubble, streets torn apart by mycetic spore impacts. Evidence of fighting everywhere. Spent shell casings. Scorch marks from flamers. Blood. So much blood. Human and Tyranid mixed together until you could not tell which was which. The civilian population was mostly gone. Some evacuated to the inner hive districts that still held. Some dead. Some simply vanished. We passed refugee columns occasionally. Thousands of people fleeing toward the center of the hive, moving with the slow inevitability of crowds too large to move quickly. Children crying, adults with empty eyes, everyone carrying whatever they could salvage from their homes. None of them looked at us as we marched past. We were already dead in their eyes, just corpses that had not stopped moving yet. We reached our assigned defensive position on the third day, an industrial sector on the outer edge of the hive, factories that once produced agricultural equipment. The district was a maze of large buildings, machinery yards, warehouses, and service roads. Good sight lines in some areas, blind corners in others. Plenty of cover for both us and the enemy, the kind of terrain where battles became brutal close quarters fighting. 10th Company was assigned to hold a section roughly 2 kilometers wide, 200 men to cover 2,000 meters. We dug in as best we could, set up firing positions behind whatever cover we could find, established overlapping fields of fire, placed anti-personnel mines in likely approach routes, did everything the training manuals said to do when preparing a defensive position. Then we waited. The Tyranids came the next morning, not in a great wave, not in overwhelming numbers, just small groups, probing attacks, testing our defenses, learning our positions. The hive mind was careful, methodical. It sent expendable organisms to gather intelligence before committing larger forces. We killed dozens of them, hormagaunts mostly. Fast-moving bioforms with blade limbs that could tear through flak armor. They were easy to kill if you kept your discipline, stayed calm, aimed for center mass, did not waste shots. But for everyone we killed, the hive mind learned something, learned our firing patterns, our response times, our tactical doctrine, information that would be used against us in the next assault, and the assault after that. And every assault that followed until we were all dead and our bodies were being processed into biomass. The pattern repeated for days. Small attacks, brief firefights, casualties on both sides. We lost men in ones and twos, a soldier who moved too far from cover, a squad that got cut off during a retreat, a position that was overrun before reinforcements could arrive. Each death diminished us, weakened our line, made the next defense harder. After 2 weeks, we had lost 40 men. After a month, 80. After 2 months, more than half the company was dead or wounded. The replacements stopped coming. Command had no more soldiers to send. We were on our own, holding our section with whatever we had left, knowing that eventually the mathematics would favor the Tyranids, that they had infinite reinforcements while we had none, that we were not fighting to win, but simply to delay the inevitable. I adapted to this reality faster than I expected. The fear that had been constant during the first battles faded into background noise. I learned to function despite it, to shoot and move and fight without letting terror paralyze me. I learned to watch friends die without falling apart, to step over bodies without thinking too hard about whose bodies they were, to accept that I would probably die here and that this was simply the nature of service in the Imperial Guard. Trooper Mendel helped with this. He was older than me by 5 years, had survived 3 campaigns before Valdris Prime. He understood how to exist in the space between battles where most soldiers either broke down or became numb. He taught me small tricks, how to sleep despite the stress, how to eat when you had no appetite, how to maintain equipment when your hands were shaking, how to have normal conversations about meaningless things while sitting in a crater full of dead Tyranids. He talked about his home, a hive world called Scintilla. He described the mid-levels where his family lived, the markets where his mother bought food, the shop where his father worked as a tech wright maintaining industrial equipment. He talked about his sisters, his friends, the girl he had planned to marry before he joined the Guard. He showed me pictures on a battered data slate that he kept in a waterproof case in his jacket. I talked about Meritus, about the farm, about my family, about the harvest seasons and the simple rhythm of agricultural life, about the sky at night when you could see every star without the light pollution that hive worlds suffered from. about my sister Sarah and how she used to bring me lunch in the fields, and we would sit together, eating while watching the birds circle overhead. These conversations kept us human, reminded us that we had lives before this, that we were people with histories and connections and reasons to keep fighting beyond simply following orders. When you spend months in combat, it becomes easy to forget why you are fighting, easy to reduce existence to immediate survival, to stop thinking beyond the next firefight, talking about home, about family, about the life you left behind. This was how you maintained perspective. Sergeant Corin was different. He never talked about his past, never mentioned family or home or anything personal. He focused entirely on the present, on keeping the squad functional, on making sure we had ammunition and water and functioning equipment, on maintaining discipline when exhaustion made men careless. He was not cruel, but he was hard, uncompromising. He shot men who broke under pressure, executed soldiers who refused orders, did what commissars usually did, but with the authority of long service and proven competence. The men respected him because he kept us alive, longer than we had any right to be. He understood Tyranid tactics better than anyone in the company, could predict their movements, anticipate their strategies, position us in ways that minimized casualties while maximizing kill rates. We trusted him to make the decisions that would give us the best chance of surviving another day. By the 6th month, 10th Company was down to 87 men. We had been pushed back through multiple defensive lines, lost most of our heavy equipment, were relying on scavenged ammunition and supplies taken from units that no longer existed. The Vox network was degraded to the point where communication beyond our immediate area was impossible. We were cut off, isolated, fighting a war that had already been lost while waiting for an evacuation that would never come. The mycetic spores had been falling for 3 days when everything changed for me. Not the large spores that carried warrior organisms. These were smaller, stranger. They broke apart in the upper atmosphere and released clouds that drifted down like fog. The clouds covered everything, got into our equipment, our clothes, our rebreathers. The air tasted wrong. Chemical and organic simultaneously, like breathing in something that was alive and dead at the same time. Command said it was part of the tyranno-forming process, the hive mind preparing the planet for consumption, making the atmosphere more suitable for Tyranid organisms while making it more hostile for human life. We were told to keep our rebreathers on at all times, to avoid direct exposure when possible, to report any unusual symptoms to medical personnel immediately. We followed these instructions as well as we could, but the rebreathers only filtered out the largest particles. The microscopic spores got through, got into our lungs, our bloodstreams, our tissues. Everyone was being exposed. Everyone was breathing in Tyranid organisms with every breath. Most of these organisms died immediately, killed by human immune systems. But some survived. Some found ways to evade immune response. Some began to grow. The defensive position where this happened to me was behind a fallen cargo hauler in what used to be a vehicle maintenance yard. We had been holding this position for 18 hours, fighting off periodic Hormagaunt assaults. The attacks were becoming more frequent, more aggressive. The hive mind was building towards something, preparing for a major push that would probably break our line completely. I was firing controlled bursts at targets in the shadows. Standard doctrine, 3-round bursts. Aim for center mass. Don't waste power packs on uncertain shots. Mendel was beside me doing the same. We had fought together so long that we worked in rhythm, one firing while the other reloaded, covering each other's blind spots without needing to communicate, operating as a single unit rather than 2 separate soldiers. The Hormagaunts came fast, moving in that distinctive scuttling run that made them difficult targets, their blade limbs catching light as they moved. I tracked one through my sight, led it slightly to account for its speed. Fired. The last bolt caught it in the thorax. It stumbled, but kept coming. I fired again, hit it in the head. It went down. The organism behind it stepped over the corpse without slowing. This was when Sergeant Corian fired the shot that missed my head by 3 centimeters. I did not know there was a Hormagaunt behind me. Did not hear it approach over the noise of combat. The first indication I had was the last bolt passing close enough that I felt the heat on my scalp. Then the sound of the Hormagaunt falling. Then Corin's voice saying he had killed it. I turned to thank him. He was already shooting at something else, already moving to the next target, already focused on keeping the squad alive through the next minute of combat. This was Corin. This was who he was. He saved your life and expected no acknowledgement because saving lives was simply his function, his purpose, the reason he existed. I returned to firing. Another Hormagaunt down, another power pack spent, another few seconds bought. The assault continued for another 20 minutes before the Tyranids pulled back. We had killed maybe 20 of them, lost 1 man from our squad when a Hormagaunt got close enough to strike before dying. Private Theron, 20 years old, from a shrine world whose name I never learned. He bled out before the medic could reach him. We left his body where it fell because there was no time to move it to a collection point. This was when I felt the burning sensation on my neck. Small, sharp, like an insect bite. I reached up to brush it away but found nothing, just heat on my skin. I thought maybe I'd been hit by debris, or grazed by a ricochet, or burned by superheated air from a near-miss last bolt. Small injuries were constant during combat. You learned to ignore them unless they were serious enough to impair function. The burning faded to a dull ache. Background noise among all the other pains and discomforts. I forgot about it within minutes. Had other concerns. The ammunition situation was becoming critical. We were down to 2 power packs per man. The water supply was contaminated with something that caused stomach problems. 3 men in the squad were showing signs of infection from minor wounds. The Vox caster was malfunctioning. Command had not responded to status reports in 6 hours. These were the problems that occupied my attention. Not the small burning sensation on my neck. Not the microscopic spore that had penetrated my skin during the assault. Not the Tyranid organism that was now beginning its work inside my body. I was already infected, already dead, already becoming something else. But I did not know this yet. Would not know for several more hours. And by the time I understood what was happening, it would be far too late to stop it. We held position for another 6 hours. No more assaults. Just the constant stress of waiting for the next attack. Knowing it was coming, not knowing when. This was worse than actual combat in some ways. Combat at least gave you something to focus on, something to do. Waiting just gave you time to think about all the ways you might die. Mendel tried to start a conversation about food, about what we would eat when we got off Valdris Prime, when the evacuation ships finally came, when we were reassigned to garrison duty somewhere safe. It was fantasy. We both knew there would be no evacuation, no reassignment, no safe posting, but we played along, described elaborate meals, argued about which foods were best, made detailed plans for restaurants we would visit and dishes we would order. It helped pass the time. The burning in my neck had gotten worse, spreading down my shoulder. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on Mendel's descriptions of scintillant cuisine, but the pain was becoming difficult to dismiss. Not overwhelming, not debilitating, but persistent, constant wrong in a way that normal injuries were not wrong. When the next rotation came, when we were pulled back from the line for a rest period, I found a piece of broken mirror in the rubble, held it up to look at my neck. The small red mark from earlier had grown, was now a dark spot the size of my thumb. Black veins radiated from it, spreading under my skin. The flesh around it was swollen, hot to the touch. The wound looked infected, but infection did not usually spread this fast. did not create this pattern of dark veins, did not feel like something moving beneath the skin. I should have gone to the medici station immediately, should have reported this to Sergeant Corin, should have followed protocol for potential exposure to Tyranid bioweapons. But I looked at the medici tent 50 meters away, saw the line of wounded men, saw medics who were exhausted and overwhelmed, saw the reality that medical supplies were running low and triage meant that minor wounds were not being treated unless they became life-threatening. I made a decision. I would wait, give it a few hours, see if it got worse. If it did, then I would seek treatment. But for now, it was just a wound, probably an infection, probably nothing that would not heal on its own or with some basic antibiotics. This was my second mistake, the mistake that sealed my fate. But I was tired, hungry, in pain from a dozen different injuries. My judgment was impaired by exhaustion and stress. Making rational decisions under these conditions was nearly impossible. So I made the decision that seemed reasonable at the time. And by making that decision, I condemned myself to what followed. The rest period lasted 4 hours. I tried to sleep but could not. The pain kept me awake, growing worse in stages. It would plateau at a tolerable level, then spike to something intense, then plateau again at a higher baseline. Each cycle lasting about 30 minutes, each spike worse than the last. By the end of the rest period, I could barely move my left arm. The pain radiating down my spine was making it difficult to stand straight. The black veins had spread across my entire shoulder, were creeping toward my chest. The original mark was now the size of my palm, hard to the touch, like something solid under my skin. When I pressed on it, I could feel resistance, feel something that should not be there, feel movement that was not blood flowing or muscles contracting, but something else, something alive. I started to understand then that this was not a normal infection, that something was wrong in ways that antibiotics and rest would not fix. But I was being called back to the line. The next shift was starting. Mendel was asking if I was ready. Sergeant Corin was organizing the squad. There was no time to deal with medical issues unless they made you unable to fight. And I could still fight, could still hold a las rifle, could still pull a trigger. So I went back to the line and told myself I would deal with it later. The organism inside me was growing, spreading, establishing itself throughout my body. It had penetrated my bloodstream, was using my circulatory system to distribute itself to every organ, every tissue, every cell. It was not attacking my body, not destroying it. It was integrating with it, becoming part of my biological structure, rewriting my cells at the genetic level to serve its purpose. But I did not understand this yet, did not know enough about Tyranid bioweapons to recognize what was happening. I thought I was fighting an infection, thought my immune system was responding to a foreign pathogen, thought the pain and swelling and strange sensations were just symptoms of my body fighting back. I did not understand that the pain was actually the organism making changes, modifying my nervous system, altering my muscle tissue, preparing me for the purpose it was designed to serve. 18 hours after infection, I could no longer hide what was happening. My skin had turned gray, not everywhere, just across my shoulder and chest where the organism had spread most thoroughly. The black veins were visible to anyone who looked. My left hand was developing small, hard bumps under the skin. My movements were becoming uncoordinated, jerky, like my nervous system was misfiring. Mendel noticed during the next assault. We were fighting side by side as usual when my left hand spasmed, dropped my las rifle. He grabbed it before it hit the ground, handed it back to me, asked if I was all right. I said yes, said it was just fatigue, said my arm had fallen asleep from lying in an awkward position. He looked at me for a long moment, did not believe me, but did not push the issue. We had a fight to focus on. The assault lasted an hour. We killed 30 Tyranids, lost 4 men, fell back to a secondary position, repeated the pattern that had defined our existence for months. Kill them, retreat, kill more. Retreat again. The line moving steadily backward, always backward, never forward, never holding, just delaying. After the assault, Mendel pulled me aside, away from the others. Spoke quietly so no one else would hear. Told me I needed to see a medic, that whatever was wrong with my arm was getting worse. That ignoring it would not make it better. That I was putting the squad at risk by not getting treatment. He was right. I knew he was right, but I also knew what would happen if I reported to medical with these symptoms. The medics would recognize Tyranid infection, would report it to command. Command would send a commissar. The commissar would execute me. Standard protocol, no exceptions, no mercy. Infection meant immediate death. I told Mendel it was just an infection, that I would get antibiotics during the next rest period, that it was not serious enough to warrant medical attention. He did not believe me, told me to at least show it to Sergeant Corin. Let the sergeant decide if it needed treatment. I agreed. Said I would talk to Corin during the next rotation. I was lying. Had no intention of showing anyone, was hoping that somehow the infection would stop spreading, that my body would fight it off, that I would wake up tomorrow and find the symptoms had faded. This was denial, pure denial. I knew on some level that what was happening to me was not normal, was not something that would resolve on its own, but acknowledging this meant acknowledging my death, meant accepting that I was already gone. And I was not ready to accept that, not yet, not while I could still think, still move, still function as a soldier. 24 hours after infection, I could no longer maintain the illusion that everything was fine. My skin had turned gray across my entire torso. The black veins covered my chest and back, had started creeping up my neck toward my face. My left arm had developed hard patches, not just bumps anymore, but actual plates. Like armor growing through my skin, my fingers twitched constantly, performing small movements that I did not command, flexing and extending without my conscious direction. The fever had started. My temperature was rising to levels that should have caused unconsciousness, but I remained awake, aware, functioning despite what should have been debilitating heat. My body was burning from the inside, sweat soaking through my uniform, shaking so hard that my lass rifle rattled against the metal I was using for cover. But worse than the physical symptoms was what was happening to my mind. I was having thoughts that were not my own, memories that did not belong to me, knowledge about things I had never learned. I would be thinking about the current tactical situation and suddenly have detailed information about Tyranid attack patterns, information I had not been briefed on, information that came from somewhere else. The hive mind was touching my consciousness. Not fully, not completely, but enough that I could feel its presence, like something vast and alien pressing against the edges of my awareness, probing, testing, learning everything about me by simply examining my thoughts. Every memory I had, every experience, every piece of knowledge, all of it being read and analyzed and absorbed by something that existed beyond normal consciousness. I tried to resist, tried to keep my thoughts private, tried to maintain boundaries, but it was like trying to keep water out of a sinking boat. The hive mind found every gap, every weakness, every moment when my concentration faltered, and it pushed through. Took what it wanted, learned what it needed, used my own mind as a source of intelligence about human tactics and psychology. I saw things through this connection, brief flashes, images that were not from my memories, worlds being consumed, populations being processed, biomass being collected and redistributed. I saw the feeding, the endless, mindless consumption that defined the Tyranid species. I saw what happened to the people who were caught, not killed cleanly, not given the mercy of death, but broken down, absorbed, converted into components that would be used to create more Tyranids. And I understood then what was happening to me, what I was becoming. I was not just infected, I was being transformed. My body was being converted into a biological weapon, a bomb designed to spread infection to other humans. My tissues were being filled with spores. My organs were being repurposed to grow new organisms. I was becoming an incubator, a breeding ground, a weapon that would walk back to human lines and detonate, spreading Tyranid infection to everyone nearby. This understanding broke something in me, some final barrier of denial that had been keeping me functional. I realized I was already dead, had been dead since the moment that Spore hit my neck 24 hours ago. Everything since then had just been the slow process of my body realizing what my mind now knew. I was gone. Davian Roth was gone. What remained was just biomass being processed, tissue being repurposed, a corpse that had not stopped moving yet. Sergeant Corin found me shortly after this realization. I was sitting in a corner of our defensive position, trying to tear the chitin plates off my arm, blood everywhere, the plates regrowing as fast as I could remove them. The pain was enormous, but I kept tearing, kept trying to remove what was growing on me, kept fighting against the transformation even though I knew it was futile. Corin stood there watching, his face showing nothing. Then he drew his last pistol, pointed it at my head. The standard response to Tyranid infection, quick execution before the infection could spread, before the soldier could become a threat to their comrades. It was mercy in its own way, a clean death while you were still human, while you still had identity and consciousness and some small measure of dignity. "How long?" he asked. His voice was flat, emotionless, the voice of someone performing an unpleasant but necessary task. "Since yesterday," I said. My voice was shaking, from fever or fear or both. "Since the Spore fall." He kept the pistol aimed at my head. I could see his finger on the trigger, could see the weight of the decision in his eyes. He was calculating, weighing duty against other considerations. The regulations said he should shoot immediately. No hesitation, no delay. But regulations did not account for the reality of being down to 87 men, of losing soldiers faster than they could be replaced, of needing every gun on the line even if some of those guns were held by the dying. "Can you still fight?" he asked. It was a strange question. Could I fight? Physically, yes. My body still worked. My hands could still hold a las rifle. My finger could still pull a trigger. But was I still me? Was I still Davian Roth? Or was I already something else wearing his face? "Yes," I said. "Because I could fight. Because I could still serve some purpose before the end. Because dying in combat was better than execution in a corner." He lowered the pistol, did not holster it, just lowered it. "Then fight," he said. "Fight until you can't. When you can't anymore, when it takes you completely, you come find me. I'll make it quick." It was as much mercy as anyone got in the Imperial Guard. A few more hours of life, a chance to die doing something useful. Better than a bolt round to the head, better than dying alone, better than most infections got you. He walked away, left me there with blood on my hands and alien biology growing through my skin. I picked up my last rifle, checked the power pack, returned to my position on the line. If I was going to die, I would die fighting, would take as many Tyranids with me as possible, would make my death mean something even if that meaning was small and temporary and ultimately futile. The next assault came 3 hours later. Hormagants again, dozens of them, moving fast through the rubble. I fired on full automatic, did not bother conserving ammunition, did not care about power pack reserves. I would be dead before supplies became an issue. I killed 8 of them, maybe 9. Lost count in the chaos. The recoil from sustained fire made my infected arms scream with pain, but I kept firing, kept killing, kept serving my purpose as a soldier while I still could. Mendel was beside me, fighting with his usual efficiency. He glanced at me once, saw the state I was in, saw the gray skin and black veins and chitin plates, understood immediately what it meant, but he said nothing, just kept fighting, kept working with me as we had worked together for months, treating me like I was still human, still his comrade, still Davian Roth. This small act of recognition, of treating me as if I still mattered despite knowing I was infected, this meant more than I could express. In a galaxy where infected soldiers were shot on sight, where Tyranid corruption meant instant death, Mendel chose to fight beside me, chose to treat me with dignity, chose to give me a few more hours of being human. The assault ended. We had held, lost 2 more men, down to 85 now. The numbers kept shrinking. The mathematics kept favoring the enemy, but we were still here, still fighting, still delaying the inevitable. 30 hours after infection, my body was changing in ways that could not be hidden. The chitin plates had spread across most of my torso. My spine was changing shape. I could feel vertebrae shifting, elongating, creating new structures that pushed against my skin from the inside. My rib cage was expanding, making room for organs that should not exist in human biology. My abdomen had started to swell. At first just minor bloating, but it kept growing, kept distending. I could feel things inside, moving things, living things, growing things. The organism was using my body cavity as a breeding ground. My organs were being repurposed. My stomach becoming something else. My intestines converting into structures I had no names for. The horror of feeling this happen was beyond description. I was being violated at the most fundamental level, my body betraying me, my flesh becoming something alien, my tissues serving purposes I could not control and did not choose. I was still conscious, still aware, still experiencing every moment of this transformation. The organism kept me alive intentionally, kept my brain functioning, kept my nervous system operational. Because I needed to complete my function, needed to walk back to human lines before detonation, needed to spread infection to my comrades. The compulsion to return was becoming overwhelming. Not a suggestion, not a desire, a biological imperative, like hunger but more intense, more demanding, more impossible to resist. Every instinct screamed at me to go back to the defensive line, to find my squad mates, to get close to them. My body was trying to fulfill its programming even though my mind understood what would happen. Understanding the horror did not reduce the compulsion, did not make it easier to resist. The organism controlled my nervous system, controlled my motor functions, controlled everything except the small fragment of consciousness that still identified as Davian Roth. I fought against it, used every bit of will I had left, sat in a corner of the ruined factory, held onto a support beam, refused to move even though my body was trying to stand, trying to walk, trying to complete its mission. The war between the organism's programming and my remaining will was agony. Mental agony worse than any physical pain. The sensation of being a prisoner in your own flesh, of watching your body try to betray everyone you cared about, of being unable to stop it. 36 hours after infection, I lost control completely. My body stood without my permission, started walking without my direction, moved toward the defensive line where my squad was positioned. I was screaming inside my head, trying to stop my legs from moving, trying to turn away, trying to do anything except walk toward my comrades. But the organism was stronger now, had integrated too deeply into my nervous system, had overridden my conscious control. But something happened then. A moment of clarity, a realization that changed everything. The organism controlled my movement, controlled where my body went, but it relied on my knowledge for navigation, for understanding terrain, for avoiding obstacles. It gave general direction but expected local control to handle specifics. This was my advantage, my last remaining agency. The organism wanted me to go to the defensive line, but I knew where the defensive line was, and I could choose to go somewhere else. I turned my steps. Not much. The organism resisted. But I had knowledge it did not. Knew this factory complex, knew the layout, knew alternate routes. I told my body I was taking a shortcut. Told the organism I knew a faster path. And because it had absorbed my tactical knowledge, it believed me. Let me navigate. Let me choose the route. I walked away from the defensive line, turned down an alley between ruined buildings, moved toward the abandoned section of the industrial complex, toward empty warehouses where no humans remained, toward ruins that contained nothing but rubble and broken machinery. The organism realized what I was doing after several minutes, tried to correct my course, tried to turn me back. But by then I had created enough distance, had moved far enough that returning to the defensive line would take time. Time I did not have left. My body was failing, not from the transformation, but from the strain of containing what had grown inside me. The pressure in my abdomen was becoming unbearable. My skin was stretching to the breaking point. I could see the organisms moving beneath my flesh, could see their forms pressing against tissue that was about to rupture. I had maybe 30 minutes before detonation occurred, whether I wanted it to or not. I kept walking, one foot in front of the other, fighting the compulsion every step, fighting the organism's attempts to redirect me, fighting my own body's betrayal. Each step was a victory. Each meter was a battle won. I was not going to let the hive mind win, was not going to let it use me to kill my comrades, was not going to serve its purpose. This was my final act of defiance, my last choice, my only remaining victory. The organism had taken my body, had taken my future, had taken everything except this one decision, and I was going to make that decision matter. 42 hours after infection, I reached an empty vehicle assembly area, a wide open space in the center of the abandoned complex. Nothing here but broken concrete and rusted equipment. No heat signatures, no living things, no humans to infect, just emptiness. I collapsed, not from choice, but because my body stopped functioning. The organism had reached critical mass, had completed its preparation, was ready to fulfill its purpose. My abdomen was grotesquely swollen. Skin stretched so thin it was translucent. I could see them through my flesh. The bioforms that had grown inside me, rippers with their blade limbs, borer beetles with their mandibles, flesh worms in writhing masses, all of them ready to emerge, ready to spread, ready to find new hosts, but there were no hosts. Just me, alone in an empty building, dying on my terms rather than theirs. It was not much. In the grand scope of the war, it meant nothing. One infected soldier detonating in an empty building rather than among his comrades. One weapon wasted. One small victory that would not change the outcome. Valdris Prime would still fall. The Hive fleet would still consume the planet. Humanity would still lose. But I would not be the instrument of that loss, would not be used to kill my friends, would not serve the hive mind's purpose. This was victory, small, meaningless, but mine. The detonation began with my skin rupturing along my abdomen. The pressure had become too much. The organisms inside had grown too large. My flesh split open like overripe fruit. The spore sacs burst in sequence, each one releasing clouds of microscopic particles, infection vectors spreading through the air, searching for living tissue, finding only concrete and metal and emptiness. The larger organisms emerged. Rippers first, they spilled out of my body cavity in a chittering mass. blade limbs clicking against concrete as they moved. They scattered immediately, programmed to seek prey, finding nothing. Confused by the lack of targets, they wandered the empty space, attacking shadows. Eventually they would die. Their bodies would rot. Their biomass would be wasted. All that effort, all that transformation, all for nothing. Borer beetles came next. Larger, heavier, their mandibles designed for tearing through flesh and bone. They attempted to burrow into the concrete floor as if it were soft meat, disappeared into holes that led nowhere, trapped underground, dying slowly in darkness. Another weapon wasted. Flesh worms erupted from my chest cavity, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, a writhing mass of small organisms designed to spread through crowds, to infect multiple hosts simultaneously. They covered the ground around my body, searching desperately for living tissue, finding none. Within minutes, they began to die. Without hosts, they could not survive. Without flesh to burrow into, they had no purpose. They died in masses on the concrete, their bodies forming a carpet of failed biology. My spine split last. The central column that had served as the main growth point for the organism. It burst through my back like some grotesque flower. Tendrils spread out, seeking nervous systems to connect to, seeking brains to infiltrate, finding nothing but air. The tendrils waved blindly for several minutes before withering, dying, collapsing back onto my ruined body. The pain of this process was absolute, beyond anything I had experienced, beyond anything I could have imagined. I was being torn apart from the inside, my body rupturing in multiple places simultaneously, my organs being expelled, my tissues being shredded. I was dying in the most violent way possible. But I was also experiencing this death from multiple perspectives. My consciousness had fragmented, had dispersed across the organisms that emerged from my body. I was seeing through Ripper eyes, feeling through flesh worm sensory organs, tasting the air through chemical receptors, experiencing existence as dozens of separate entities while maintaining some thread of awareness that connected them all. This was perhaps the worst part. Death did not bring release, did not bring an end to consciousness. I remained aware, remained present, remained conscious even as my body was destroyed. The organism had integrated my neural patterns into its biological network, had copied my consciousness and distributed it. I existed now, not as a single mind, but as information spread across multiple systems. I watched through Ripper eyes as my body finished its detonation, watched the spore clouds disperse into emptiness, watched the bioform scatter and die, watched the failure of the weapon I had become. And I felt something that might have been satisfaction, a ghost of an emotion, a memory of what satisfaction used to feel like. I had won. In some small way, I had won. But consciousness did not end. The organisms that had emerged from my body were dying one by one, and with each death, the fragment of consciousness that inhabited it winked out, like candles being extinguished, like lights going dark. My awareness was shrinking, contracting, fading, but not ending, not completely. Some organisms survived longer than others, found water in puddles, found nutrients in the soil, found ways to persist despite the lack of hosts. Through these survivors, I continued to exist, not as Davian Roth, not as a person, but as patterns, as information, as echoes of consciousness spread across a dying biological network. Days passed. Most of the organisms died, but fragments remained. Spores that had settled into cracks in the concrete, cells that had merged with local bacteria, genetic material that persisted in the environment. And through these fragments, I persisted, not thinking, not feeling, just existing as information in a biological system. I saw through these fragments as the war continued, as the Hive fleet's consumption of Valdris Prime progressed, as human forces fell back, as defensive lines collapsed, as the planet was broken down piece by piece, the atmosphere becoming toxic, the water turning acidic, the soil converting to biological sludge. Everything that made Valdris Prime a living world was being stripped away, processed, converted into resources for the Hive fleet. Eventually, a larger organism found my remains. A Ripper swarm drawn by chemical signatures. It consumed what was left of my body, absorbed my genetic information, carried it back to a reclamation pool. In the pool, my biomass was dissolved, broken down to constituent elements. My DNA was read. My genetic memories were extracted. Information about human biology, about Imperial Guard tactics, about psychology, and fear and resistance. All of it was absorbed into the Hive mind's collective knowledge. And I experienced this, felt myself being dissolved, felt my atoms being separated and redistributed, felt my information being read and catalogued and filed away. I understood finally what it meant to be consumed by the Tyranids. Not killed, not destroyed, but absorbed, made part of something larger, losing all individuality while gaining a kind of terrible immortality through integration. My biomass was distributed. Parts of me went into new warrior organisms, parts into weapons, parts into infrastructure. I became building material, ammunition, fuel, everything and nothing, everywhere and nowhere. Spread across the Hive fleet's biological network, contributing to its growth, its expansion, its endless hunger. But somewhere in that distribution, some fragment of Davian Roth remained, a pattern in the genetic code, a sequence of information that carried memory of human experience, of family, of choice, of the decision to walk away from the defensive line. This information was valuable to the Hive mind. It analyzed it, studied it, learned from it. The Hive mind learned that humans possess will, that they can resist programming, that they can choose death over service. This was important information, useful information. It was incorporated into future infection protocols, used to refine bioweapons, used to make the next generation more effective, to prevent other hosts from making the same choice I made. My final act of defiance became a lesson. My small victory became intelligence for the enemy. My choice to save my comrades became data that would make it harder for future soldiers to do the same. This was the ultimate horror. Not just being consumed, but knowing that even resistance served the Hive, that even defiance fed it, that fighting back just made it stronger. Months passed. My consciousness continued to fragment and disperse. I existed in dozens of organisms, hundreds, thousands, each carrying some small piece of what had been Davian Roth, but none of them aware of it. None of them knowing they were made from the biomass of a guardsman who had tried to resist. One of these organisms ended up in combat against my old unit. I recognized them through its senses, through heat signatures, through chemical signatures, through patterns of movement. Sergeant Corin was still alive. So was Trooper Mendel. They were down to maybe 50 men now, fighting the same hopeless battle, delaying the inevitable, dying slowly. The organism I inhabited attacked. I could not stop it, could not warn them, could not do anything except experience the attack from the attacker's perspective. It went for Mendel, blade limbs moving too fast to see. He fired, killed 3 other organisms, but mine got through, hit him in the chest, penetrated armor, tore through flesh. I tasted his blood, felt his flesh in the organism's mouth, felt the satisfaction of feeding, and somewhere in that experience was memory. Memory of sitting beside him behind a cargo hauler, memory of his stories about Scintilla, memory of conversations about home, memory of friendship. But I could not feel sadness, could not feel regret, could not feel anything. Those capacities had been dissolved. I could remember what emotions were, could recall their conceptual existence, but could not access the actual experience of them. They were just information now, just patterns stored in biological structures. Mendel died. His body was consumed. His genetic information was absorbed. Everything that made him a person was reduced to useful components. And I participated, could not stop it, could not even wish it had been different. Just observed as my friend was broken down and processed and distributed across the swarm. This is what happens when a Tyranid spore plants you. This is the truth that the Imperium does not tell recruits. This is the reality that commissars understand when they shoot infected soldiers without hesitation. Not just death, not just transformation, but the complete annihilation of self, the reduction of consciousness to distributed information, the conversion of person to pattern, existence without end but without meaning. I am still here. Writing this through processes I do not understand, using organisms I do not control. This message is being composed across thousands of separate entities, each contributing fragments, each carrying pieces of memory that should have died with Davian Roth, but did not. I was Davian Roth. I am Davian Roth. I will always be some fragment of Davian Roth scattered across the hive fleet. But Davian Roth is also dead. Has been dead since that spore hit his neck. Everything after was just the slow process of realizing it. If you read this, if these words reach you somehow, remember this. When you see the spores fall, when you feel that burning sensation, when you notice the marks spreading, do not wait, do not hope, do not delay. Go to your commissar, show them the infection, ask for mercy. Because death is mercy, death is the good ending, death is remaining yourself until the end. What the spores do is not death, it is conversion, it is integration, it is consciousness persisting forever without self. It is existence without identity, it is horror beyond ending. I was human once. I remember being human. The memory exists across the swarm now, scattered, fading, but still present, still aware in some terrible way. This is my warning. This is my message. This is what happens when a Tyranid spore plants you in Warhammer 40k. The Emperor protects, but not from this, never from this. Choose death while you still can. End.